Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 52. Yep, a whole year. I'll talk more about that at the end of the podcast. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you're looking for more information about the podcast, past guests, or want to catch up on previous episodes, or just want to drop me a line, it's all at the website, desertladydiaries.com. And I invite you to follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries and on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. Today on the podcast is photographer Sandra Goodin, who met the Queen on her first visit to the desert. Many years later, on what was to be a 4-day desert trip, Sandra found herself staying for weeks after reading a printed framed affirmation at her friend's place, which led Sandra to begin re-examining and eventually healing her life. Welcome back to Desert Lady Diaries. I'm here today with Sandra Goodin. She is a professional photographer and graphic artist. She's worked 10 years as an independent contractor for a twist-tie manufacturing company, and she's also been on staff as product and event photographer for Shakti and Bhakti Festival since 2015. Sandra offers photography and graphic design services here in the Morongo Basin, Coachella Valley, and beyond. She also volunteers her time and service photographing the Joshua Tree Music Festival and Guitarfish Music Festival. That one is in Northern California. Her photographs have been published in print and online by the High Desert Star, LA Yoga Magazine, Vice.com, Palm Springs Life, Coachella Weekly, Lulu Mag, and LAYoga.com. Her photography services include portraits in studio, home, or on location, products, events, stage and theater production, live bands, and weddings. And we will put her website and social links in the show notes. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome. So as I usually start out, the first question always is, what was your first experience with the desert?
Well, my first experience, I would say, was in 1983. In my early 20s, I came to visit a friend, Marnie Mueller, which is now Marnie Kelly. Her family lived in 29 Palms at their ant farm compound, where her father and all the ants lived on the property, on their 5 acres or 5+ acres, and in their own little houses. And so I came to visit one year, and Marnie's father was a member of the Elks Lodge. And after Sunday breakfast at the Elks Lodge, he asked us, his name was Ernie Paul Mueller, he asked us if we all wanted to take a drive and go meet the Queen. And we said, of course we do. So he took us in their station wagon into the monument at the time, and we had no idea where we were going. We get out of the car and take a few steps over to this rock, and it is indeed the Queen of the Desert. It is one giant yoni. And so we were all shocked and posed in front of it. And that's my first memory, is meeting the Queen of the Desert, which is still there by White Tank at the 29 Palms entrance of the national park.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's one of those little secrets, but it's not a secret.
Right.
So that's my first memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
From that point on, where were you living?
So I was in my early 20s, and now I'm 55. I was in Southern California in Orange County, working and living. And my next time back to the desert, I would say, was in the 90s. There was some family members that had passed, same family, so I'd come for their services. But then I returned in 2006. I was living in Long Beach. I was ending a 12-year relationship, and I decided to come out and visit my same friends. Little did I know that I would be staying in a little bit longer. I planned to stay for 4 days, but I ended up staying for weeks and doing a major detox in my life, and decided to stop taking all prescription medication that I was on. So I went through a real healing crisis and journey, and the beginning of my journey to where I am now. So that was in 2006, and I left then, and I came back in 2008, having found the job that I have now for the twist tie company. And I decided to find my way back here and start photography because I love the night sky, and I can do my twist tie work from anywhere. And my friends here said, come on over and stay as long as you need to until you can get on your own. And here I am now. I live in the Pioneer Pipes Canyon area, Pioneer Town.
Do you remember back to when you were In that process of detoxing, and you came out for 4 days, which ended up being much longer, do you remember any things that happened to you during that time, or any feelings that you had about the place that kind of tipped the scales for you to say, I want to be here more?
Yeah. During that time, I was outside a lot and just first saw the stars. And I wanted to start trying to photograph them and learn how to do some light painting. And so I've always been into scenic photography, and the desert landscape just lent itself as a whole new platform to a whole new subject and a whole new muse for me to fall in love with the sky, whether it was the sunrise or the sunset or the stars, meteor showers. Those were the main things that I loved watching and trying to photograph. My initial catalyst, I would say, to being here and in my healing journey was a statement on my friend's wall by Louise Hay, and it said, I love myself, therefore I. And I couldn't get through reading the whole poem because I broke down, realized I wasn't living at all. I wasn't doing any of those things that Louise Hay proclaimed she did when she learned how to heal herself and help so many others. And so that was a catalyst moment for me. But just being out here in the desert air, I love warm weather more than cold weather. And at the time it was August, so I had a few months where it was just really lovely, warm breeze, and really it was just my healing journey and the landscape here that caught me, initially.
Tell me about your interest in photography. Where does that come from?
Gosh, I can recall when I was a child, my father had an Instamatic camera, and he was always taking pictures, pulling it out, and watching it develop. So we enjoyed watching that. Back then it was black and white pictures. And in high school, I had an interest in printing. And so regional occupational program was part of my school in Santa Ana. So I entered in, I wanted to do photography, but there was only graphic printing. And so the instructor said that there would be no money to be made in photography, that I ought to get into printing. So I did. I got into printing, and I did that for 18 years. I ran a printing press from age 17 to the year 2000, when I decided to go learn graphic design and go to Platt College and sit down instead of stand and do some pre-press instead of printing. At that point in time, I picked up a camera in my printing courses and just started doing some weddings and some things just on my own, not knowing what I was doing, but I loved it. My mother would say, why are you taking so many pictures of the seagulls? And I didn't have an answer for her, just that I was just trying to get that one shot of the seagull that I loved. And they spoke to me, and we didn't have to talk. And so I found myself liking to take pictures of things that weren't interactive, so that I could take my time and escape, in a way, in the scenic landscapes or animals or flowers. So that was part of my medicine and healing along the way growing up. But that was just, I've always been a loner child, take off on my bicycle and just say, Mom, I'll be back later. I'm taking my camera. I'm going to go on the bike trail. And I would just take off all day. Then it was safe to do that.
Sure.
So photography has been with me all my life. I put it down for some time in my 20s and 30s, and then I picked it up again later on in my 40s, and have been investing in camera gear and just realizing that follow your bliss. If you follow your bliss and do what you love,
you'll be taken care of.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm trying to do, is do it all. I have no limits on what I like to photograph. I find that I'm enjoying more live bands and interacting with people more than I ever have, and also enjoy going and shooting a macro flower close-up at early mornings. So
yeah, that's what amazes me every day. I can't help but pick up my phone, and try and take a photo. There's just that one window in the morning that doesn't last more than 5 minutes, I don't think, where things have like this, I don't know even how to describe the tone.
It's very warm. It's very warm light. They call it the golden hour. There's one in the morning and one at night. Mm-hmm. And although I agree, there's something really magical. And they call it the magic hour as well. And there's something special about it, I think, in the morning because it's so still.
Right.
And nobody else is up.
Right. That just adds to the feeling that it gives
totally
off.
Does.
Yeah, it's just the way it lights. I have this Joshua tree in front of my place, and just the way it lights it. It's almost like stop for at least 5 minutes and just even meditate on that, reflect on that.
Totally.
Yeah. I actually had, which I don't get often, 2 roadrunners. They hopped the fence outside, because I heard the noise. They make that or whatever that noise is they're making. And I said, "Ooh, that's different. I need to go see what that is." Which is another one of those beauties of living here.
Yeah.
You either hear things or you kind of see something out of the corner of your eye and tune into it, and you're really more present.
Totally.
I think in these moments. So how did you get a job at a printing press? What was that all about?
Well, in high school, in the ROP program, I took printing, and so I was one of the 3 girls in the program, and I just took a liking to it. I had great teachers along the way, and I've always been very curious. I've always been a why does that do that? Why do we have to do that? So it helped me understand, the whys helped me understand what I was doing and helped me further along. And I would just attribute my printing success to my teachers, and that I had very patient teachers and very talented teachers along the way. And so I got a job after the training in summer school. My mother happened to know a printer in town who knew another printer. And so when I was 16, I got a job running a printing press at a postal instant press in downtown Santa Ana. And I would go to high school, and then after high school, go to the printing shop for work, and then go home, do my homework. And then after that, it just one thing led to another. I ended up at a Kenny the Printer in Irvine, California, which is a very successful print shop in Orange County. And from there, back in the 80s, you could open up the newspaper and there would be columns of jobs, printing press operator, columns, and I mean just a whole page of them, whereas now it just doesn't exist. And
social media manager now.
Yeah, and so I was able to get a job basically anywhere with that skill. And I found my way to Las Vegas, living there for 5 years. Because of printing, I could basically get a job anywhere. And in 2000, I decided that I was starting to have some pains and wanted to make some changes. So I was just trying to find another natural progressive step that I could take the printing experience and apply it to pre-press and maybe do some design work. And so that's how I found my job now for the Twist Tie Company. Found it on Craigslist 10 years ago, and I've been doing that part-time. They make twist ties that go around produce and vegetables.
Oh, wow.
And I'm honored to be a part of that team. Proud that it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, I'm paying my way to do more photography work. So it's a nice balance.
Yeah. So when you came to the desert, you had these friends that were already here. So sometimes I ask, how did you find your community? So did you seem to stick with that community of friends and then eventually met more people? Or how did that all work for you?
I would say initially that was my compound, my tribe, my base, and they still are my other family. My dear friend Rochelle Skidmore, her Aunt Marnie Kelly, and her mother Cindy Skidmore are my people. So they are still there, and I stayed there with them for a while, and I took a photography class with Spellman at the Copper Mountain College. That was in 2006 or 7, and I believe I left after that to go to Orange County for a little while and found the Twistum's job and came back. And it was during that time of going and coming back. I would come back and stay at my friend's place in 29 once a month, and we would go into the park shooting. There was a lot of things going on then, but I would say not until 2015 when I decided to move here and be closer to the Bhakti Fest and the products that I was beginning to shoot for their Bhakti shop, that I just started putting myself out there and asking the universe to bring me like-minded people that were available, that wanted to co-create, that liked what I liked, and that saw me and that I could collaborate with or just hang out with. And so I think it was just a slow creation of one thing leading to another. You meet one person and then you go to an event at First World and you meet a whole family of amazing people.
Yeah.
And so the whole community has been very, very generous and welcoming, and So just over the years, it's taken me a few years, but I would say now I have an extraordinary collection of amazing people, and I may not see somebody for a while, including you.
Right, that happens to us all the time.
And when we see someone again, it's always delightful and pleasant, and we always mean to get together, and our lives get in the way. But I would just say over time, each step leads to the other. But there's an amazing amount of people here, creatives.
Yeah.
So
it's great.
Yeah, it really is.
We ran into each other, as a matter of fact, a few nights ago at an event, and you told me something that I didn't expect to hear, which was that a couple of years ago, you were a size 14.
Right. Yes.
And we started to have a conversation about the fact that either you were on a lot of prescription meds. So what happened that was a situation for you, and then that you decided, I'm done with this and I'm changing my lifestyle?
Well, I certainly didn't see it coming. When I planned to make the trip to come see my friends for 4 days, I brought enough medication for 4 days. And after reading that statement about Louise Hay wrote, I love myself, therefore I, and it's in her You Can Heal Your Life book. It was gifted to my friend, and it was in a very simple frame from a family member who, that was her statement. That was her prayer, that she wanted everybody to know who she was. So reading that, I realized, oh my God, I'm the walking dead. And I was dead in that relationship, and I want to feel better. And so I just made the decision, and it wasn't the smartest decision to do it cold turkey without any medical assistance, but my friends had these amazing products there that helped me get started. There was some detox baths. There was some other products there that have been reformulated over the years. Sometimes good things change, and so I was able to get off sugar, and just actually the side effects from the 5 things that I was taking, the 4 things, caused weight gain and inflammation. And so just by cutting those out and then going through some detoxing and taking certain products, did the weight start slowly coming off, and I stopped having migraines, I stopped having vertigo, I stopped having all the symptoms that I thought I was having when I thought that I needed the medication, and then my body followed. And so I dropped weight and came back to my normal frame size, I believe, and stopped craving sugar. I gave up sugar. And so I just really made some drastic changes. And now it's been 10 years, so I feel like coming here to the desert was almost like a running to myself, closing one door and opening up a new window, a new chapter, if you will, of this new stage 2, act 2 of my life.
Yeah.
And now that I'm in the fabulous 50s, I've decided that I just want a higher quality of my life, and I've never been healthier and happier. I still have the struggles. I embrace my depression and the things that come along the way with that when you stop taking those things that you think you need to balance you out. I now have to work a little harder to maintain my balance and peace of mind and wholeheartedness. And so really I've gone within to do all of that, because the answers are within me.
Right.
There's no outside myself to find anything. So it's really a journey inward, journey home, back to myself.
Well, and we were talking because I've been doing a little bit of change up of my food, diet and things like that. And then in some of the reading that you recently sent me, and some other things that I'm discovering out on my own, or by, fishing around on Facebook, asking folks, hey, is anybody managing this in a more natural way?
Yes.
I've come across this, we talked about the Candida, and now I'm reading this medical medium book where they're also talking about this Epstein-Barr virus that is so latent in people's systems and attacking their organs, and they don't even know it, but are experiencing these symptoms of migraines and depression and whatever else is coming along with that, even nail fungus and things like that, and thinking, I'll go to the doctor and get something to cure it, when in fact that's probably not the best move. And I'm not a doctor, so don't listen to me if you like going to the doctor. But I don't think it doesn't seem to me, based on what I'm seeing, reading, and by talking to a number of other people who have experienced similar situations, that the medical community has caught up with this. And why would they? Pharmaceuticals are making a ton on all these pills. Yeah. So what do you say about that?
Well, what I've learned and what I've come to believe now is you are what you eat. And so your body is the temple. And so it's just really, how much do you love yourself? Because the body doesn't lie. And so if you tune in, dial into yourself, you will listen. You will know what your body, what it responds to and what it doesn't like, what isn't serving you. And so I've just discovered, there's been so many things along the way. I had a boss 10 years ago when I first got into graphic design and being a graphic artist. She had so many allergies, and she discovered Eat Right for Your Type. And so I kind of looked into that for a while. I discovered, my body, my blood type, and I think there's something to everything, really. There's no one thing for any person, but every body is different, and just because it works for me might not work for you.
Right.
But I do believe in superfoods. That was a word we never heard before growing up, but since food has changed so much, I buy into it now. There are some foods that are super for you.
Right, yeah.
And super awesome. And so I'm drawn to those things now. And I've kind of turned my taste buds around and decided that I may not like the way something tastes, but if it has a benefit for my body, eventually, mind over matter, I will start to love it after a while. And I never liked beets growing up. I hated them, and now that's my current thing, is I love beet juice and all things beets. So it's fairly new for me, but I'm hearing the more people I talk to about them, they're telling me how they prepare them and how they love them. But my body is responding to that right now.
Yeah.
And so I still love meat, although I don't know that it's always the best for me. I'm just trying to have a simple life and just give my body what it needs instead of what I crave. So really it's just about doing your own discovery work and what works for you and what your body responds to. So the more you love yourself, the better you feel.
Right.
I know. And so my big thing right now is just trying to stay hydrated. I have a lot of room for improvement there.
Yeah, me too. Especially here in the desert.
Yeah, especially here in the desert. And I find myself cramping up and paying more attention to that now. So basically, I'm just trying to dial into my body and listen to what it's saying. And that's what I hope we all do. So, we could be the best us version of ourselves that we can be.
Right.
And that's constantly changing as our best changes.
Yeah, because there are different things that are important to us as we age. Things change, and some things are just not all that important, or we're just not willing to put up with certain things and move on from those. So in your inner work and reflective work that you've done with yourself, what are some of your favorite or most impactful resources that you've come across that you could maybe recommend to people listening?
Okay. Gosh, I've always been a big fan of, I don't know if they call them self-help books anymore, but I love that section in the bookstores.
Me too.
When I would go into a bookstore, now you can go online and buy any Audible version of any book that's available. Some aren't, but I would say I've always been a fan of books. So that information, anything you need to know about is available to you. But I've been a book person. Back when I ran a printing press, we weren't supposed to read while we ran a long job, but sometimes we did. And so I would have little poems. I always loved little poems, and they didn't call them memes back then. Little quotes, little statements, affirmations. And now I love listening to podcasts. Yours is one of them, Desert Lady Diaries. I've listened to pretty much all of them. I'm a podcast listener as well. Gosh, 10 years ago, I discovered HayHouseRadio.com, and that really did save my life. The programming has changed so much over the years, and I still love it. I don't tune in as often as I did before, but back then there was Louise Hay, there was Wayne Dyer, there was Sylvia Brown, there was so many others that have helped me along the way, and they would repeat their programming, and I didn't mind. There were times where I couldn't stand the feed in my head when I woke up, so I had to turn it on immediately so I could get some positivity flowing through to counter what was happening coming from me. And so I would just say, even music has always been therapeutic for me. I've been exposed to, my father was a jazz lover and classical music lover, and my sisters, one of them liked oldies but goodies, the other one liked R&B, and my brothers liked rock and roll. And so along the way I picked up a love for all of that.
Sure,
and for different aspects and different parts of myself. Therapy is so wide ranged because in music therapy, I mean, it depends on what it is that you're going through. Sometimes you don't want lyrics. Sometimes you don't want to hear the songs that remind you of someone. But there's been artists that I've discovered along the way that don't remind me of any particular person but my journey. And that song speaks to me, so I'll play it over and over again. So I would just say the ways that I've helped myself has been with music, with books, with podcasts now, and getting outside. Nothing like fresh air.
Right, being in nature.
The ocean.
Right.
Being in nature, wherever you are, just step outside, look up.
Yeah.
And there's so many days and so many people I know living from the city in Orange County area. You're just driving from point A to point B, and you're not really
They're
scanning,
just looking at the bumper
around
in front of them.
Totally. And
Yeah.
I've always been a sky person, morning, noon, or night. I'm a clouds. I love the clouds. I love it here because the sky is so generous. It's ever changing. Breathing fresh air is the best thing that you could do first and foremost. So take your book outside, take your music outside, or just walk out there and just sit on a rock, and it's very grounding.
Right. Do you find that the desert is more conducive to the things that you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
However, when I lived in the city, I positioned myself in the last few years that I was there by the ocean, and I lived in Huntington Beach, close to the ocean, and so I would run my errands on Pacific Coast Highway. Some days I wouldn't go to the beach. I would that would be enough. Just the ions of the ocean and the sun right there, but just the energy of the ocean. So I do love the water. However, I love the desert. The fact that it's, we're a little more isolated up here. It's higher quality of air, I think.
Right, for sure.
And a higher vibration of living, although I think it's really all, wherever you are is where the vibe is high.
Right,
You don't
exactly.
have to go somewhere for that.
No. Particularly if you come to a spot and all of a sudden have you get this feeling that everything's right where you are.
Yes, and I don't know that I would have the same experience in the city with my photography as I have here. I'm happy here. I love it here. I love where I live. I don't know what would be next for me or where I would go next. I don't really think along those lines like I used to. What's next or where, So I do love it here. I'm very happy.
And you've made a couple of changes. So you've been around. You've been in 29 for a while.
Yes.
And then I know when I met you, you were here in Joshua Tree, and then moved up to Pipes Canyon, Pioneer Town.
Yes.
What have some of the differences been with those moves and the energy in those places that you've felt?
Well, in 29 Palms, of course, it's a very sacred, safe place at my friend's property. So that will always be special to me. In Joshua Tree also, it was very special. One of my dreams here was always to have my own, on my terms, artist in residency experience. And so I've been waiting and just longing to get there. And not knowing that I could go through the programs that they have available here, maybe not feeling the confidence to apply or to see myself in that situation. But I just really wanted to be somewhere was very still and quiet, where I could go outside on my property and take some pictures of the flowers, not have to go far, take the night sky pictures. And come away with a body of work that was symbolic of my immersion into the space here. And so I've been out where I am now in the boulders for a year, and it's taken me a little longer to get out there to do it. However, it is still a dream of mine, so I'll be there a little while longer. As much as I feel sometimes isolated and afraid out there being alone, there's another part of myself that feels at home there.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm supposed to be right now. In doing it my way, it might take me a little longer to get the body of work from that immersion, unlike all the other projects I'm taking on and such. But that's one of the heart for me that I would like to have. So I'm grateful that the universe opened that space up for me, and it was just all divine the way I fell into it, and
it's the way it seems to happen
to
here.
be seen. Yeah, it does. So you go with it. I'm going with the flow in every step along the way, and I couldn't be happier with the discoveries and the beautiful souls I'm meeting along the way, connections, and creativity is just the end result of all of that.
Right.
The pieces that we create. So
well, I appreciate you coming and talking on the podcast today.
Thank you. I've been a fan from the beginning.
Oh, thank you. I like hearing that.
Yes.
So thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you heard something that inspired or enlightened you, I'd love to hear about it. Send an email to desertladydiaries@gmail.com or start a discussion with other listeners at the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. Next week, award-winning poet Lauren Henley will be talking about her poetry, growing up in Joshua Tree, and her battles with multiple autoimmune diseases. And this podcast couldn't continue without the generosity of the women who come on to be interviewed and your donations. So if you're enjoying the podcast, I hope you'll go to the website, click on the donate button, and be as generous as your situation will allow. And with that, I really can't believe the podcast is 1 year old. It's really been a great privilege to sit down with all of the amazing women who've been on to share their discovery and love of the desert and all the good works they're putting into the world. Whether they're running a household or running for Congress, making art or making music, each one of their stories is unique, with a common thread of a love for the desert and an appreciation for finding a place where they feel a sense of freedom and possibility. Thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much for listening.